Good day, everyone,
How
and
to get rid of
welcome.
that.
I'm told you I'm gonna. I'm working on I'm working on one. Good day, everybody, and welcome to the Story of America with Pace and Williams. We're going to be having a new title coming up soon with season five. We're going to be shaking things up. Uh, Politics has
I
become
think we need to have like
a little oversaturated. So
rebranding
we're
done by
we're
the next
still
time
going
moving
to
forward.
we're still going to talk about politics, but it's not going to be the central focus of the show. We want to expand and talk about more stuff outside of things like that. I still want to do some of those stories about great American culture, American past, but there's more interesting stuff. When you have every show out there making something about politics, and plus, um, most of the time with Rhett and myself, our jobs or at least portions of our jobs and daily lives involve around politics. And plus, what is it? Next year we're gonna be swamped with the political scene around this time of the year next year because it's election season all over again. So we're gonna be pretty swamped next year. So it's time to break pace and talk about some more stuff. But first, before we go any further with that, uh, welcome back to season five, my co-host Rhett. I know you weren't here for our beginning of the year episode, so go ahead and tell everybody Happy New Year and let us know how things are going for you at the start of the year.
Um, things are going. I got. I've already announced this on Facebook, but I got a position as a writer with a new uh, political news site, roaringright.com. It's still growing, so hopefully that turns into it. Even if I don't make anything off of it. Yeah, you're steady. What's something's going on with your mic?
Let me fix that. Is that better?
Yeah, no, you're really, really like quiet.
Damn it. Let me fix it. All right, so is that better or is it
Mm-mm.
still quiet?
Still,
All right, let
it's
me go
still. I can't hear you.
bump up the volume. Probably something happened with the volume and the settings. Yeah, that's what happened. The volume changed itself. All right, is this better?
Yeah. Um. Anyway, even if I don't end up making much off of it, I'll still continue to do it because that's a foot in the door of sorts. I could use that on my resume for other maybe stuff in the world of politics. I do get tired of it, but you know, it's something to do.
Yeah, you get tired of the political
You
stuff
need to
more
turn it up a
more
little bit more.
more easily than I do. Oh, geez, let me try this. Let me turn it up. Let me just bump it to 100. All right, is that better?
Yeah, the reason I get tired of it is because it's not that it's just so repetitive. It is part of it, but it just seems beneath me at times, like beneath my dignity. You know, even honestly, I kind of see it similar to how I see sports now,
I didn't know
except
you
the
were a bit
fact that
sports enthusiast.
I'm not. I hate sports. I think it's pointless and it's like bread and circuses. That's what it is to me. But politics is basically it has become that. The only difference is it actually has an effect on our lives, and sports don't.
Yeah, when I'm dealing with the political stuff, sometimes it gets overbearing because it's tiresome because right now things are not good. It would be different if things were going good politically, but politically, things are just so astronomically backwards for us right now. I don't know. I don't know about you, Rhett,
Politics
but
is also full of people who think they're smart but are really stupid, though, and I hate that.
well, that is true. I don't know. I don't know about you, Rhett, but this is what really ticked me off about this political season. You know, I don't know if you watched the State of the Union. I did. It was horrible, but I watched the State of the Union, and I'm sitting there. I'm listening to Biden talk about the Republicans want to end your Social Security, your Medicare, and then the Republicans get up there and they're booing, saying that they don't want to do it. But at the same time, I'm sitting here looking at my W-2s, and I'm saying, I wish that somebody in Washington will have the courage and guts to get to step in there and do something about Social Security and Medicare, because I paid more in Social Security this year than I did in state and federal taxes combined, just Social Security, not even Medicare, Medicaid included. And I'm not going to ever see that money or get it back because we're not going to see Social Security. So why in the hell am I paying more in Social Security than uh than I am in taxes? That really.
Because they don't, because nobody is in politics is actually saying that we're not going to get it. They're still acting like it's going to be around, and that's just how it's going to be. And why would they discontinue a money spout for them?
But you know
Even
what
if we
also
don't, they don't actually care if we ever get it. Most of
makes
them are
it
so
worse.
rich they don't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
What makes it worse is that you have these what was it? Our debt ceiling has been reached, and the first thing that the Fed says that they need to start cutting is Social Security and Medicare. But we have a massive problem under the Biden economy, uh, which is credit card debt. I have two new credit cards, and I can't get the prices down on my credit cards because every time I turn around and pay money down on those credit cards, I got to go spend that money right back because it's so ridiculously expensive to purchase anything. I was talking to a friend of mine. Uh, for a chuck steak, it was $16 at Rouse's. $16 for one singular chuck steak. It's gotten so far out of hand, and our generation, we're suffering for it. Like I said, we're not we're just losing money. We're throwing money away that we will never see again. And if we ever do see it again, I think the numbers were that we need to live to be close to 900 years old in order to recuperate all of the money that we spent in Social Security by the time that we get ready to receive it. But I want to move on and focus on some stuff that's a little bit more fun. Let's move on and talk about the subject of today's episode: the conspiracy in our skies, folks. So recently, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had some instances with the Biden administration shooting down uh, unidentified flying objects floating around in American airspace, starting with an a spy balloon by the Chinese government, which came into our to our borders from Alaska down through Alaska. Which I need to remind people how large Alaska is. It is larger than half of the continental United States. So this balloon came
No,
down
no,
from
no, no. That no, it's not that big.
it's
It's
almost
not
that
larger than
big.
half.
It's about
It
half of
looks
the
that way
continental.
on a Mercator projection, but it's really not. I mean, it's huge, but it's not as big as half the country.
But
Anyway, that's beside the point.
when you take a look at this at the size of Alaska, and where the balloon would have had to have entered in through Alaska, because apparently it had to enter through Russian territory, which Russia has no reason to stop that balloon from from crossing over here. Also, Russia probably has no basis in that particular area that's manned appropriately right now, particularly with their war going on, because that area is inhospitable for the most part. That's close to Alaska. But then That balloon comes down through Alaska, crosses in through Canada, then crosses down. I think it was Montana. It came into first, goes and then goes across 11 of our major nuclear facilities and other major towns and areas before finally exiting after 3 days in South Carolina, or was it North Carolina, one of the Carolinas, before being shot down in the Atlantic. You know, people have been talking about the Biden's connection with China. Do you think that this lessens that conspiracy theory that the Bidens have sold the United States to China, or that this reinforces that?
Dude, I don't even honestly. I'm not convinced that it was really what they said it was, a Chinese spy balloon.
What do
That's
you
just
think
what
it was?
everyone's been saying. I don't know, but I don't. I definitely, why would I have any reason to believe that that's, it could have been anything. It was definitely a balloon of some sort.
Well,
Maybe
we
it really
know
was a Chinese spy balloon, but
we do know that it's
it's
Chinese.
really not.
The Chinese have claimed
People
that
saw it.
one.
Like the only reason they did anything about it is because people caught it on video.
It's true, and plus, it was what 60,000 feet in the air. The Chinese claim it. The Chinese claim that it was a weather balloon, but for a weather balloon to be, I think they said it was the size of like 2 or 3 football fields and had about 10,000 pounds of technology equipped to the bottom of it, which is the reason why they didn't want to shoot it down over Montana
Yeah.
or Alaska, which doesn't make any sense considering the
The
vast
balloon
majority of Alaska.
itself is really
Uh,
not the issue here. The fact is, honestly, I see it as kind of like a test to see what we would do, and they just let it float over the whole country without shooting it down. And then after that, they go and just start shooting anything down because I guess Biden thought it looked bad if he just let all these things, But they start shooting down stuff, and they apparently don't even know what they're shooting down, but it's
yeah,
really
apparently,
probably
and
nothing.
they gave a press conference about it. I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, talking about it. And basically, the press conference where Biden came out and finally said something about it was to say that there's nothing to see here. We don't have any more information to give you. Oh, by the way, it's not aliens.
Probably because it's embarrassing to them because apparently one of these things was a hobby balloon,
Yeah,
an
Hobby
expensive
Lobby
hobby
balloon.
balloon, like Hobby Lobby,
Not Hobby Lobby
some
balloon. I mean,
balloon
I
hobby,
mean, it's
whatever.
a hobbyist organization that they get these massive balloons and they blow them up and they shoot them up into the sky, and it
Yeah, and
got
it's
shot down.
embarrassing to them that we
Uh,
that we literally wasted a $500,000 missile on a hobby balloon.
I think
That's
we missed
embarrassing.
it too. I think we missed it the first time,
A million
and we had to
dollars
shoot it
too.
down. We had to shoot it down again, and then there were what 3 other ones that were shot down as well that we still don't know what those are. But the theory is that these are our old satellites or old balloons that are just out there that the government was shooting down, and it's just a
Well, it wouldn't be a
projection.
satellite.
Well, you know what I mean. Our set, some of our old stuff that the government is trying to shoot down to project strength. And at this point, uh, I think it's rather confusing for the American people because we don't know what's we don't know what's going on. We do know that now they're trying to show urgency and shoot it down over the Pacific, but it took them a week to allow the one balloon that we do know was from Chinese origin. We don't know exactly what it was, but we do know it was Chinese origin. We let them cross the entire country from coast to coast before we decided to shoot it down in the
Yeah,
Atlantic
whatever they
Ocean.
were wanting, they got that information, whatever
Yeah,
they were
if
looking for.
if it was a spy balloon, they definitely got the information. Uh,
I don't know if it really was because they have a global satellite network in space, so they can pretty much spy on us anyway.
You know, me personally, I think it was something. I mean, I know it was flying over a lot of our nuclear facilities. Personally, my theory is that it was surveilling potential areas uh, for agriculture that is near top places of interest. Because if you take a look at what the Chinese have been doing, they've been coming over here ever since these people at Davos told us that we can't produce farmland anymore. The Chinese have come over here, and Bill Gates and the rest of this, the total cabal, have been buying up all the farmland and agricultural purposes. So I think the Chinese were scouting out. My personal head theory is I think they were scouting out areas close to potential military bases or large populations to purchase up that land. Because if we assume that the Chinese are still trying to, or still in competition with us to become the new superpower. And if we are to follow some of the theories that many of these black supremacists and others are throwing around there, that the white people are going to become the minority in the United States by 2042. Well, if that's the case, the Asian population would be the majority, and that would probably come from China if we're to believe those particular theories.
So this is the big problem with that. Um, China can't afford to go to like full on war with us. And their population, like for example, if China received the sanctions that we put on Russia, their entire economy would collapse and half a million or half a billion people would starve. They're By the end of the decade, their population will be less than half of what it is now. So I don't really know what they're doing with a balloon over here. I honestly think it was just a test to see what we would do. But we are their main source of income.
That is true. I mean,
Without us, they would be nothing.
people don't seem to understand that the Chinese, as a communist regime, communism does not generate capital. It just can't. It's not possible for communist societies to generate capital. They have to get their capital from outside sources, typically from capitalist sources, or they become totalitarian conquerors and loot and plunder. That's really the only way to gain capital in a communist regime. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but that's really the only feasible way to gain income. And we are their biggest source of income. And I think the test is there because I think Russia was doing the same thing. North Korea is doing the same thing. Right now, they're testing America's waters to see what's going to happen in 2024. Because if they have a fear that Biden's going to be out of office, or the Democrats are going to be out of office in 2024, they might try to advance their plans to take Taiwan or to take Ukraine in Russia's case, or North Korea. I don't know what their real plan is.
Yeah,
No,
but
I
this
don't think
the
anyone
point
does.
is China can't afford to lose the money. If they go to war with us, they're done for. There's no way they come out of that any better. And even if they don't do that, they're facing a demographic collapse by the end of the decade. The only thing that's really going to happen for sure this decade, our globalization is going away. We'll be back to how we were, during the beginning of the 1900s, just regions of influence. We'll be okay because we have all the resources here we need, and a few of our allies will be okay. But Russian, Russia, Russian will cease to exist as an ethnicity within 20 years, 20, 30 years. There won't be Russians anymore
You
because
think so?
they're also facing demographic collapse, just like, yeah. And they're
Well,
just throwing bodies at this Ukraine thing. They know that there won't be a Russia anymore pretty soon.
do
That's
you
why they're
think?
fighting like this.
I was just about to ask you if you think perhaps that Putin sees the writing on the wall, and that's the reason why he's trying to get the old Soviet Union back to where it was.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily what he's trying to do, but yeah, he does see the writing on the wall. But it's inevitable. And they just want to die on their own terms, I suppose.
I don't know if you watched the State of the Union, but there was one particular part in the State of the Union where the Republicans and Democrats were laughing, where Biden said, and I quote, that we're going to need fossil fuels for at least 10 more years, as if we have any real alternatives on the table right now within 10 years. And if we're going by the Democrats' standard, well, you're going to get rid of fossil fuel powered cars and Democrat strongholds like California and, and Maryland, I think it was, and Massachusetts, and in Chicago. You're going to get rid of fossil fuels based vehicles by 2030, and by 2035 completely ban the repurchase and selling of new and used gas powered vehicles in these particular states. So if we're to take their word for it, why what what feasible means do we have to turn to a different version of fuel than fossil fuels within 10 years? I mean, they're not doing nuclear. It's
It's
not
not gonna. It's not actually gonna happen.
it's it's not feasible at this time to do geothermal. I don't think it's feasible at this time.
It'll
America,
never be feasible worldwide. Only certain places.
yeah,
Like Iceland, which
America,
already uses it.
like I suppose you could say some parts in Central America due to Yosemite, but the vast majority of Americans can't rely on that. The vast majority of Americans can't rely on hydrothermal energy. The vast majority of Americans can't rely on wind turbines. And even to run all of these things, you still need petroleum.
Those are not really part of the conversation. I mean, I don't think anybody seriously thinks that any of those could is a feasible alter. The only feasible alternative is fusion, which they just made a breakthrough in, but it's still got a long way to go before
What do you mean,
it can
nuclear
really be
fusion?
used. Yes. Now, the other possibility is, he's just saying that because it's the State of the Union. Those are just that's a TV show. That's not really a speech.
It's a made for
Um,
made for TV advertisement.
it's yeah, basically. We're gonna need fossil fuels a lot longer than just 10 years, in all likelihood. But it's it's a the climate crisis is a completely fabricated. It's not really a crisis at all. You know,
Yeah, it's just the Earth
the CO2 in
doing
the
what it's supposed to do.
atmosphere.
The
Actually,
Earth
the
is correcting
CO2
itself.
was higher during the medieval warm period, which they removed from the record, so they can
Yes.
manipulate the graphs. But it's you know we know this. Uh, but
Yeah.
the other thing is whatever kind of technology is being used by these UAPs, somebody has that technology, and it's not us.
You love that term, don't you? The unex the unexplained aerial phenomenon. You love that term.
Well, I use that when I'm referring specifically to the ones captured on military.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
On military surveillance. Now, uh, a lot of things have been in the news about breaking developments. I mean, I know that you're not one to tune into Fox News too often, and I don't watch them as often as I used to, minus a couple of shows that I like to catch on a daily basis, The Outnumbered and The Five. Um, but Tucker Carlson has been doing a lot of talks about unexplained aerial phenomenon that was being captured on these particular things. Do you think that we are any closer to determining whether or not there are some extraterrestrial entities that have been orbiting the United States or the globe as a whole?
so the deal with the government and like disclosure, the only people in the government who actually, well, there's people, but a lot of these projects are like deep black budget kind of stuff that not even the president or intelligence leaders of intelligence agencies know about or even get briefed on. Somebody knows what's going on, but there's just so much evidence now that there's definitely something going on with these things. I don't know if anybody actually knows what they are. Some people would say, but at this point, it seems that they actually have control over the laws of physics in a way that we wouldn't think. At least science does not explain for as we currently understand it. But let's be honest, we really have no idea what's going on here. People,
Yeah.
we think we know certain things about science, but we really don't.
Yeah, and the thing that I love to talk about when we talk about science is science for the most part is a guessing game until we're able to conduct experiments that is provable repeatedly over and over again. The
And
scientific
certain
method.
things just can't be tested in that way.
Exactly. As a paleontologist by study, archaeology is one of my favorite things. One of the things that I always turn to is the measure of carbon dating. It's not an accurate science, but it's the best thing that we have. We don't know for certain because we just weren't there. We weren't there millions of years ago, so we don't know for certain. But we have come up with a variable in carbon dating that is the best thing that we have. But we have found some developments in the scientific world and paleontological studies and archaeological studies that seem to defy all logic when it comes to our carbon dating system. And that's just because things that we can't uh, prove repeatedly over and over again through scientific experiment, or things that we can't watch play out and process, we can't account for those variables. So sometimes we're wrong, sometimes we might be off a little bit. And when it comes to the laws of physics, we have made it laws, but we don't quite know exactly
Yeah.
everything that
Well,
there
they're
is.
not really laws. They might be laws at certain specific places at certain times, but even the speed of light has changed
Yeah,
out to
the
the
speed of
seventh
light.
or eighth decimal place. It's a
Yeah,
real
because what
change.
what was it? It used to be 3.008
Oh, I don't know
to the
exactly.
tenth power. So
Hmm.
and I think it was the speed of light was supposed to be somewhere around 287,000 meters per second or something like that.
I think it's 186,000 miles per second. Anyway, but the scientific establishment is quite resistant to change, but it's not just science, it's also archaeology.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Especially when it comes to ancient civilizations, they don't want to accept all the mountain of evidence that there was a global reset, at
Yes.
the end of the Younger Dryas. And it's to me, it's obvious looking at some of the stuff in ancient Egypt that they had power tools of some kind. They had
I do
advanced
believe
technology.
I do believe that because when you take a look, and I'm not going on the hieroglyphs type of thing. People always try to point up to the hieroglyphs showing a picture of a helicopter. Well, we know that that's not a
Well,
helicopter.
it well, they do have hieroglyphics that look like they're showing flying machines of some sort, but the hieroglyphics come from the later period.
Yes,
The most advanced stuff is the oldest.
yes,
And
and
it doesn't make sense to say that they just started out at their peak and then went down. That's not how it works.
yeah,
Civilization doesn't work that way.
and another thing, science, when it comes to actually taking scientific discoveries and challenges to the pre-prescribed notion of scientific study and scientific theory, science is very opposed to any type of change. But when you take a look at the scientific world now, particularly in the field of archaeology, I know we talked about this before, they are more than willing to make changes on the basis of queer theory, for example. We in paleontology and archaeology, in recent studies, uh, they've been telling us in those particular fields that we cannot identify animals or prehistoric humans based upon their sexual dimorphism.
That's not real science. So
Exactly.
real
They're
real
able.
scientists aren't saying that.
And then you have this one here, where we have the Tyrannosaurus Rex. So now they're talking about making two different species of Tyrannosaurus Rex: Tyrannosaurus regina, which is Tyrant Lizard Queen, and Tyrannosaurus Imperator, which is Tyrant
Well,
Lizard Emperor,
who
which
is
doesn't
saying
make any
stuff or
sense
where
to
you're?
me.
Well, obviously it doesn't. So why are we even? What? Obviously that's ridiculous. So why are we even going there?
What I'm going with this is that the scientific community is all too willing to, I think, as a way of trying to not face the reality that we can be and have been wrong in various different aspects. They are trying to uh, overshadow that by using these new progressive ideals as a scapegoat, so to speak, to take the attention off
But
of
I
all of
don't
the
think
stuff that
it's
they get wrong.
it's sexual dimorphism is a fact. So the people who might be trying to do that kind of stuff would be like probably university administration, but not the faculty, surely. Those people are in the social sciences
Yes, the social
and
science,
the fields
they
that just get completely made up,
exactly the fields that have
like
no actual
lesbian dance
jobs.
theory or any kind of studies, any kind of racial studies. Those are not real fields. Like
I
majoring
agree.
in that kind of stuff is just completely,
I
what are you really
agree.
doing?
I 100% agree with you. Uh, I also wanted to mention when it just comes to this particular thing about this. Uh, we've no longer got control of the rover. I think that its battery finally decided to die off on us. Do you think that there's uh, any chance that us leaving different differing fields of space debris on different planets or different surfaces, you think that could come back and bite us in the butt generations from now?
What are you talking about? Like junk on Mars or space
Yeah,
junk?
junk on Mars, space junk. There's
I
the
don't know
idea.
how leaving stuff on Mars would really, I don't. What are we supposed to? How are we going to get them back? The only way we get them back is when they finally go.
And I
Space
don't
junk.
think.
I think that problem will probably be innovated to solve. Somebody will invent something that goes around Earth and just harvest all the junk that's out there. Eventually, we'll
Do
have
you
to.
think? Do you think that the space junk could possibly have signals? Because I remember watching on the television or some years ago about the sounds that stars make. I'm pretty sure you probably heard seen that documentary before, the ominous sounds that stars can make. But there was also that frequency. I think it was on I can't remember the sound device that it was captured on, but that frequency that hasn't been duplicated. I think it happened like maybe 40 or so years ago. That captured a frequency from the deep regions of space that could have possibly been intelligent life. We don't know because obviously, if it's in the deep regions of space, how would we know? But do you think that having this large degree of space debris could make us more susceptible to encountering extraterrestrials if extraterrestrials do indeed exist?
Not really. I mean, I don't think it's a question of whether they exist or not. They're definitely out there somewhere. Now, with the UFOs and UAPs here, I don't know if they're necessarily some, aliens from another planet. That's a possibility, but in my opinion, that's the most boring possibility. The properties that they exhibit seem to suggest that I don't know what interdimensional or
You
perhaps
think it's
an advanced
interdimensional?
civilization that I don't know. I'm just saying it
Well,
seems
I
like there's
I like
something
to
more
talk
than
about that because this gets to segue into talking about Bigfoot. uh, but there have been theories about uh about Sasquatch. Uh, Various theories. One of my favorite theories has been that Sasquatch is the original Nephilim, the giants from the Book of Enoch. Uh,
I think that's ridiculous, dude.
that's one of my favorite ones. It's not very plausible, but then there's also the theories about them being spiritual beings that can travel between dimensions, and that's the reason why we can't find them. Me
All
personally,
right.
I just think that they're an animal, and that we
Yeah,
have
it's
sufficient evidence about it, but the government doesn't want to release that evidence.
dude. I don't honestly. If it's anything, it's an animal or some sort of intelligent. You know,
But do
if
you
something
think?
is intelligent, then it could definitely hide from us.
But do you think, using this as a segue, do you think perhaps that these ancient astronaut theorists may have had something all this time, that the aliens that we're looking for have never been in space? They've been here on the planet the whole time, possibly living
Yes, I do think
in a
that that's
subterranean civilization.
yeah. I do think it's very possible that there are people or some sort of civilization that could live in the underworld.
Do
There's
you
plenty of
think
space down there, and people can live. There was underground cities all over Turkey back in the day.
Do you think this gives credence to the idea of people of things like the lizard man and in the Carolinas that was first reported and on in mass in the 1980s and 90s, or that would give some credence to things like cavers reporting seeing pale humanoid figures living in the caves, which would make sense if they were living in the
Yeah, the
caves that
pale
they wouldn't need
humanoids.
that.
I don't know anything about lizard men, but I'm not even gonna, I'm not even going there. I'm talking about a breakaway civilization of humans or something like that. Um, well, one of the stories that I find the most, also, all the reports of uh, aquatic humanoids. There's a
Yeah,
lot.
like mermaids and
Um,
stuff like that.
there's a well, that I think that's kind of a misnomer. I don't really know why people call them mermaids,
Yeah, because they're
but
I
they're
mean
not really.
they're not really women. They're their own thing. But I kind of have this. I kind of have the same thing because when I took we talked about this before when we looked at the P.T. Barnum mermaid, the real P.T. Barnum mermaid, not the Fiji mermaid, which is the monkey torso and the fish body. But
Oh,
when you take a look at that picture, and you also take a look at the pictures shot from these amateur cavers from around the world that show these pale cave creatures, um, it's striking because these creatures look the way that we would expect an alien to look. But if you take a look at where they're believed to live in dark areas of the ocean, dark areas inside the earth in the caves, it would make sense for them to have these abnormal features, to have these very deep recessed large eyes because of the lack of vision that they would have in these particular areas. It would make sense for them to be hairless because what would you need hair for if you don't need to be protected from the elements as much, or if you're in the ocean, having hair would significantly reduce your speed and mobility. So even looking at those particular things, let's just looking at them from an evolutionary standpoint, a lot of these cases that we've seen of the little green men or the gray aliens or the giant ancient aliens that all have these astronomical, weird, wonky physical depictions, it would make sense if they were living inside the earth or underneath the water in deep recessed areas. Because if they were living in an area uh, out there in the wilderness of space somewhere, they wouldn't need to have those types of evolutionary adaptions, because you would have to assume that the planet that they come from would have a star to give them light, because you have to have light in order to produce food. You just have to have it. So unless these particular beings were also subterranean on their planet of origin, it wouldn't make any sense for them to have these weird physical depictions here on Earth if they were coming from a different planet.
I don't think if some intelligent species is living in underground, I don't think they would be from somewhere else. Have you the story about the Lake Baikal swimmers is insane.
Oh,
There was this
do
group
tell. I
of
don't think I've heard that one.
okay, so there's this story, and anything that comes out of the military, I feel like there's more weight to it, especially if it involves people being killed by something. So the Lake Baikal swimmers. So Lake Baikal is like the deepest lake in the world, in Siberia. These seven Russian uh, Navy divers, like basically Russian Navy SEALs, went. I don't know what they were doing. They were diving in Lake Baikal. There's seven of them, and they encounter these five humanoid, 9 to 10 foot tall, uh, something intelligent like humanoid beings that were swimming in the water without any scuba gear. And they had on these like silvery suits, and they had these little like jellyfish things floating over their head. And, humans being ridiculously stupid, you know, comparatively, they tried to capture one of these things. And if they weren't really, what are you doing here? Oh, type in Lake Baikal swimmers.
Yeah. Oh, wait a second. I shared the wrong page.
I
I
can
have it on the
I can
tab.
show you the what I've been.
Here it is, right here. I got it, right here. So this is what I just looked on the Moscow Times.
So I was gonna look up the picture of those things. It's an
Let's see
artist
it.
depiction.
Okay. Oh, you want to
It's
see a
not on there.
picture of it? All right. Let's see
No,
if they have.
I know which
Uh,
picture I'm thinking of, but I'm
let's see. Let's see. I should probably be looking at it on Google.
it's an artist depiction of what they saw.
Yeah. Let me
I know
just type
which
that
picture
in.
it is. Dude, man. Okay, never mind. You got to search.
I spelled depiction wrong. Is this it?
No, that's not the right search.
Yeah,
Let me
that's
see
like.
what's going on here. Uh, dude. Um, so I saw this video about it, but you can find the picture. Um, okay, I found the one that I was thinking of.
Send it to me so I can go ahead and
Is there a
pop it
way
up
for
here.
me to?
No, it won't. It won't. In Zoom I could do it that way, but on here I don't know if it'll give me permission to allow you to share. Do you see that share screen button down at the bottom down there?
Um, yes.
Yeah, well, click on that then. Because I want to see what you're talking about. Because I've heard of him. I'll pop it on the screen. Here, okay. So this is it.
Yeah. Pretty creepy looking.
Huh.
Um. So anyway, this is what they encountered these things underwater, and they tried to capture one of them stupidly, and immediately they were all propelled back to the surface of the lake, and they all began to suffer from decompression syndrome. Three of them died.
Mm.
So,
So
whatever these things are,
do you think
they
that
propelled
things
them
like
to the surface
this?
somehow.
Do you think things like this um, can give us an idea of the possibility of Atlantis?
Well, no, I don't think those things have anything to do with it. Atlantis is, to, to me, Atlantis was an ancient human civilization.
The more I think about Atlantis, I used to believe that it was a legitimate civilization that existed, but the more and more I read up on it, and the more and more I read up on Plato, I start more and more to think that it was just a story.
Well,
But
he says several times that it's a true story.
that's the case that I can't believe. But there's also the fact that Plato was not around when, at least according to the depictions, he should not have been around when it was there. He got the idea from
No,
somebody
he
else.
he had. Okay, so you actually got to read. Um, what is it? It's in Timaeus and Critias. The story was told to him by um, so the story was about Solon. Solon had went to Egypt during his exile. Solon was he was an ancestor of Plato. Well, I don't know, it was a couple generations earlier, but he was related to Plato. And it was the Egyptians who told Solon the story that there was this ancient civilization that existed 9,000 years prior to the time they told him this story. And that would equal 11,600 years ago from today, which coincides exactly with the end of the Younger Dryas and that the global flood that was caused by an asteroid. So, and that's what caused Atlantis to be swallowed up under the waves. Most likely
It's
location would be the Azores in the
and
Atlantic Ocean, directly
yeah,
out from the Straits of Gibraltar, which is the same thing as the Pillars of Hercules.
exactly. But the problem with it is the thing that makes it the most problematic is the size depicted of Atlantis.
It's
Atlantis,
not depicted as a. It's not depicted as a continent. It was a large chain of islands.
because it's supposed to be spherical. It's not spherical, but circular, with rings within rings within rings, with the central palace in the very middle of it. It should have been a massive
That's only
harbor.
that was the capital city. It was a global civilization.
I'll have to go back and read up on it some more because
Well, there wouldn't be,
because it just
cataclysms. There would be no evidence of it today. We wouldn't be able to find anything because the Earth has been, just punished repeatedly.
yeah, but I would think that we might be able to find something if we were able to find the ruins of Santorini. Um, if we can figure out uh exactly where it was, we should be able to find something. Now, bear in mind, we might not be able to dive deep enough to the area if the entire civilization was sunk, or if it was completely blown away. There should be some debris of some kind
You're
at the
not.
impact zone.
You're thinking about how long ago, if it's real, how long ago that would be. Within 500 years, there'd be pretty much nothing left of our cities, and if they were just left to the elements. But it's not just that. We're talking about asteroid impacts, ice age, global floods. It's not that hard to believe that there wouldn't be anything left. We wouldn't be able to find it.
If orichalcum is supposed to be such a great metal that they say it was, I would expect us to be able to find something. But
I don't know where you're getting that from.
no, I mean, according to alchemy, orichalcum is supposed to be the
I don't know what
best
that has to
metal.
do with Atlantis.
Atlantis is supposed to be made out of orichalcum.
I don't know where did that come
The
from.
the the city is supposed to be lined with orichalcum. It's supposed to most of its structures are supposed to be made of orichalcum, and it's supposed to be a very durable metal. uh, I would expect us to at least be able to find something. But the reason why I was bringing that up is because when you look at these other depictions of civilizations, the Russians have a lot of weird stuff. But let's be real. Let's be real here. Uh, as far as civilizations are concerned, outside of some of the East Asian countries and some of the areas in South America, Russia is probably the most unexplored area in the world. I mean, it's almost as inhospitable for humans to live in parts of Russia as it is for humans to live in Antarctica. And the Russians have a lot of weird stuff that happens over there. You have areas in Russia where gravity seems not to work the same way as it works everywhere else. You have you have areas in Russia where they have the Russian Almasty, which is not a Sasquatch, but it's supposed to be a Neanderthal man or a Ramphatherian. Arampitherius, or some of these ancient, long thought to be extinct species of early human or early primate that are supposed to live there. You have some of the stories that go back in the 1800s, where they had the Russians were found this wild woman. Her name was Xena or something like that, and they were forcefully raping her to try and uh 12 of her she had 12 kids. 11 of them died. They would drown the kids up inside the water and cast them off to sea. One of them survived, but he didn't live too long. I think he grew up to be like 20 or so before he died, and then they both got buried in this particular town in Russia, but there was no headstone. So we have no way of being able to verify whether or not that actually happened or not, because there's no headstone for us to dig up and find out what just who is this mystery woman. You know, Russia just has a lot of weird stuff that happens over in Russia, and it's just because there's so much unexplored territory in Russia. So
Yeah,
I can believe
there exist maps of Antarctica that are green. I don't know why. Anybody could have drawn that, but I do think it's
well
possible that Antarctica could have been inhabited at different
if
times in
uh
history.
if Atlantis was around prior to the second ice age, I do think that that could give credence to Antarctica being green, because Antarctica would have still been attached to the bottoms of Africa and South America at the time, before it split up and through continental drift. So if
No, I don't
Atla-
think so. I think that the continental drift, as far as Antarctica being connected to South America and Africa, would have been much, much earlier, millions of years.
that's
The
the only
continents have pretty much been where they are for as long as humans have been around. The only difference is the sea level, the level of the oceans has changed, so it's exposed certain parts to land. But
That's true. Um, it could also be that as well, because if we talk about the early ice age, right after that particular period of time, it was a great heating period. So that could also explain some of the area, because if you look at Antarctica, Antarctica has some of the largest mountains in the world, probably larger than even the Himalayas if you count the base of these particular mountains underneath God knows how many layers of ice. Um, and as things began to heat up, I do think Antarctica could have been green. And there's also, when you take a look at some of the areas that no longer produce the same weather environments that they did before. For example, the Mississippi River, how it goes downstream as opposed to upstream like it used to. You look over there by the Himalayas, and one side of Tibet versus the other side of Tibet gets all the rain, the other side doesn't, because the mountains rose to such a high level that the storm clouds can't cross into the area, and it created a desert in the area that was once full of great green valleys. So I don't think it's too far off, but
there's
to
so
think
many anomalies when it comes to Antarctica.
to
Like,
think that there was a
no
civilization that was
flights.
around,
Or,
that's the hard part, because what civilization would that we know of, because there are civilizations that are around, that were around, that we don't know of yet, but what civilizations were around that we know of that could have recorded a green Antarctica?
I don't know where that map came from. If you want to know about that, you'd have to research that. I've seen the map. Um, it's not. It's a real map. I just don't know. I don't remember who it was that drew that map. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it was green anytime. Obviously, it hasn't been
It hasn't
within
been for
at
a
least
long
since
time.
pretty much with the beginning of our present civilization, which would be 6,000 years ago or so.
Yeah,
It
I
hasn't been
think
since then. It would be before that.
I think if we're going to take the scientific evidence that we have so far with carbon dating, um, it probably would have been at the end or beginning of the Pleistocene era, which probably would have been around 6.5 million years ago. Should be the last time Antarctica was green. But the late Pleistocene is when modern man started to come along the plane. So that according to that,
Yes, okay.
we've
Well,
been
we're not
around
going
for
that far
about
back.
we've been
There was no
around
humans 6 million years ago.
but we've been around for about 1 to 2 million years according to some of the data. So if that's the case, even then,
The
there's
Sahara Desert was green 6,000 years ago.
yeah,
Even yes.
The
So it's
Sahara is
possible that
growing.
Antarctica was, anyway. There's some anomalies like Admiral Byrd's diary. That's crazy stuff he talked about. I don't know if any of it's real, but it's a real
The
diary.
You heard about the Voynich manuscript, right?
Yeah, I know. The Voynich manuscript is crazy too. Like
Yeah,
nobody knows
it's
what
nobody
it
knows
is. It's some
how to
sort of
decipher it. Me personally, I think it's a depiction of some type of pharmacology, with medicines made from different types of plant. And it's possible that because of the crude drawings that these plants are still around, we just don't know them because the drawings don't match anything because they were done very crudely. Or it's possible that that manuscript could have been written in a time where those plants were still around but have now been gone extinct due to over cultivation.
yeah, but it's not any known human language that it's written
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
So,
But the only thing that stumps me when it comes to things like this is me being a writer. I have created artifacts and diagrams and three distinct character based uh um alphabets that if if everybody died today and somebody was going to dig up and find these particular things, the only person in the world that would have ever been able to identify it would have been me or people who have a copy of my translation of what they mean. So for me, I have to believe that if we had advanced civilizations before, that they would have had authors, they would have had people that were telling stories that were making up stuff like we make up stuff.
yeah, but the Voynich manuscript is not that old. It's like Renaissance time or something like that. Somebody could have just made. I really, I don't think it's anything super mysterious. It could be, but it could just be somebody made stuff up.
Me personally, I still think that it's based off of real plant life here. I just think that the person who did it probably was a poor artist and likely wrote it in a dead language, a language that was dead even for the time. Could be something, uh, could be a language that predated even Mesopotamian. And even the Mesopotamian language is pretty much dead.
No, that's not. It's not Sumerian. Or we would have, or any kind of Babylonian or Akkadian or whatever, Akkadian or Akkadian, I think is pronounced the proper pronunciation, but it's not. It's not Sumerian. We know how to read cuneiform now. It's been all those tablets have pretty much been translated. The interesting thing about Sumerian is it's also not related to any other known language.
That's true, which makes it even more unique. But I would have to believe that there are probably more dead languages out there that we don't know of than there are dead languages that we do. For the simple reason that there are no cultures left alive that can tell you the story of those particular languages. The problem is many of these particular cultures, in my view and in my opinion, would have been completely absorbed by the Sahara as it grew more and more into a desert. You know, you probably won't be able to find any data on many of these particular areas due to war, due to the changing of the geology. Some areas are probably buried under thousands and thousands, maybe even millions of tons of sand.
Yeah.
But
Well,
in
the Sphinx obviously has been there for 12,000 years or more because of the water erosion from heavy rainfall.
Mhm. And this, I've always said that the Egyptians have been around for longer than they give them credit for. Uh,
Well, it's not. See, we think of. I think it wasn't. The Egyptians saw themselves as like a legacy civilization based on a much, much older civilization that was like prior to, like the Egyptians that we think of today. They found all that stuff. They
yeah,
inherited those artifacts from an older civilization,
but
pyramids
that
and
that's
whatnot. They've been there for much longer than we think.
that's why the Egyptians were so much more advanced than people at the same time period. For example, Copernicus coming up with calculus and things like that over in ancient Egypt, and it's because it was already there. The groundwork was there. They just had to copy it. um,
The same thing goes for the
for everything.
Mesoamerican, like the Aztecs and the
Yeah,
Mayas.
exactly.
Like they, and even the people, the Mexicans who live there today, will tell you they didn't build this stuff. They found it and they moved in. The same thing with
Yeah,
the Egyptians. It's like
ex-
the ancestors of all humans, or at least the ancestors of our ancient civilizations, built that stuff.
exactly. It gets very, very interesting. But we could talk about this all night, but I want to end this in about 30 minutes, so I want to talk on our next topic tonight. Because it's Black History Month, I want to talk uh about this is the curriculum. It's 81 pages. This is the curriculum for the AP African American Studies course, uh, and framework and exam overview that Ron DeSantis said needed to be amended before they could allow it to be presented in schools, in high schools more specifically. I don't know if you've followed this to any degree, but I have. Uh, I want to go over a couple of things here, because you know a little bit more about how the educational system formats these things than I do. Um, so I want to go over this topic lines here. So there are four topics or four units, should I say, in this curriculum. However, each unit in the curriculum has a number of topics. So looking at the table of contents here, this is what we have to this is what we have to work with in the table of contents. We have unit 1. Unit 1 has about 20 topics. Unit 2 has itself in it, looks like 31 topics. Now I'll go over what unit 1 is. Unit 1 is to talk about the origins of the African diaspora. So it's supposed to go into how Africans managed to get over here to the Americas, the history between the African slave trades to different coasts of Africa, which I think is a fine curriculum. Then unit 2, which has 31 topics, is about, it says freedom, enslavement, and resistance, which talks about the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage. It goes on to talk about the communal life of labor, and then this is where we have our first break here, which is gender and reformation of kinship. Don't know why gender has to be involved there. Strategies of change, parts 1 and 2. Uh, Black identities, which is about women's rights and education. Black pride, abolition and the politics of memory, which goes on to a couple more topics. So there's 31 topics in section 2. Unit 3 is the practice of freedom, which talks about the Reconstruction, Black politics, uplifting ideologies. Goes on to talk about the new Negro resistance, which again, these are broken down into topics like in uplift ideology. You have the HBCUs, labor and economics, so Black suffrage, um, Then you have the focus on arts and literature, which talks about the Harlem Renaissance, the rise and fall of Harlem. Um, then the focus on migrations, Pan Africanism, and Black internationalism. But then you get to Unit 4. So Unit 3 has 30 topics. Unit 4 has, I believe, the most topics out of any of these four units. It has 32 topics. Unit 4 is movement and debates. And it starts off nice, talking about anti colonial movements and military service, the long civil rights movement, and then it goes on to focus on the black arts, black pride, black birth of studies, which is okay stuff. You know, you have the black movements, black is beautiful. The students protest to create black um, courses, but then you get here the black feminist movement, womenism, and intersectionality. The African American Studies movement, which topic 19 of the African American Studies is Black Queer Studies. Topic 18, the movement of Memphis and Black Studies. Topic 20, Afrocentricity and Black Studies. Then it goes on, the next part, focus on diversity in Black communities, which talks about uh, post-racial racism and colorblindness. Um, then you go to incarceration and abolition, which then it goes to from that to reparations, Black Lives Today. It goes to the movement for Black Lives, where when I did this debate with people, they say that there's a difference between the movement of Black for Black Lives and Black Lives Matter, and I said, okay, I can understand that, but in the curriculum, the topic says it explores the origin, mission, and global influence of the Black Lives Matter movement and the movement for Black Lives. So it's particularly focusing on the Black Lives Matter organization and also the movement for Black Lives. Then it goes on reparations, the black struggle, Black futures and Afrocentrism. So section 4, unit 4, is completely plagued with all of this political identity nonsense and garbage that, despite the fact that this is an AP course, I don't think has any place in in a high school. What say you about any of that?
The fact that it's even a class is kind of ridiculous.
I agree. If it were me personally,
I really, I'm
I
so
would get rid
over
of.
and sick of this stuff that I don't, I really, it just makes me sick.
If it were me personally, I'd get rid of African. I would get rid of Black History Month. I'd get rid of African American Studies, uh, and and just tie it into U.S. history because it's all the same history. But nobody wants to do that. If it were me, that's how it would be done. But
It's
the
people wanting to be, their own little clique, their own little club. At this point, I've heard so much of it that I just don't want to hear. I don't even want to hear the word race. I don't, I, I'm, I'm just done with it because it's being pushed like this so much. I just don't care anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it really does drain me. This is why I get so animate about it. But we're not done with it yet because I want to talk to you about this one because you understand how uh the college or how they present it in the syllabi and what that means when it comes to the curriculum. So they have two different tables of here where they have historical content versus thematic content. So I'm going to read the numbers in comparison to what's present in the college syllabi versus the high school syllabi for the historical, and then I'll look at the thematic and read the cross comparisons for those. So in historical context, you have 98% of the syllabi in colleges will have slavery present. 96% is in high schools. Civil rights is at 70% for colleges. It's at 96% in high schools. Transatlantic slave trade is at 68% in colleges, 84% in high schools. Resistance is at 60 in both. Pre-colonial Africa is 52 in college, 80% in high schools. Reconstruction is 52% at 84% in high schools. Emancipation is at 44% in colleges, but 0% in high schools. The Civil War is at 34% in colleges and 80% in high schools, which I think that the historical content minus the emancipation, I think that's okay for an AP course for the historical context. But when you get to the thematic content, this is where it comes down to cultural stuff, which includes food, music, art, other things. That's 78% in colleges, 72% in high schools. The field of African American studies, it's very, very vague, but it's at 69% in colleges, 8% uh, in high schools. Social justice programs, social justice, Black Power, civil rights. That's 69% in colleges, but it's at 96% present in high school syllabi. Gender, sexuality, and intersectionality. That's at 68% in colleges, over 20% in high schools. Diaspora is at 55% in colleges, 36% in high schools. Race is 48% in colleges, 32% in high schools. Politics is 40% in colleges, but 60% in high schools are focusing on politics. Religion is 38% in college, only 20% in high school. Family is 32% in college, only 16% in high schools, despite the fact uh, that the family structure is the biggest problem for Black people right now. Uh, Identity is at 32% in college, 24% in high schools. So when you look at the social justice factor in this syllabi being 96% present in high schools versus a meager 69% in colleges, it's hard to disagree that there is some degree of I don't want to say indoctrination, but there is some degree of political animus or preying upon these young people to try to get them to become activists before they even graduate high school. What do you think about that?
I don't really. I mean, they've been trying to. Indoctrination has been a thing for a long time now, and kids fall for it.
Do you think that Ron DeSantis was wrong to point this out, or was he right
I
in
don't think
pointing
he's
this
doing
out?
enough.
What would you like to see him do more of?
No, I don't know how much he can really do much with the school system, and I think it could go over the line as far as outright censorship. But you can't really stop teachers from indoctrinating kids, even if you change the curriculum. If they want to do it, they're still going to try.
That's true, but this curriculum is okay minus section 4 and some problems in section 2 and 3. I would have no problem with this being a course at a college, but the fact that this is a course at a high school, even if it isn't an advanced placement course, trying to indoctrinate and politicize children before they have even been able to officially make an identity for themselves politically or otherwise is asinine. And even in colleges, I would like to see less of electives like this. But if you're going to have a queer studies course, that doesn't belong in a high school. It belongs in
The
a
whole point of
college.
it is to get them to give up their identity and take on the identity of whatever group they're a part of.
Agreed.
That's the
It,
point. No individual identity. That's not supposed to be a thing in this philosophy.
they
You're not
want
an
to
individual.
try they want to try to grab these young people before their minds are able to develop into their own selves and pervert them into being their new army because they're running out of people. And so they have to produce and engineer the new wave to remain relevant in power, if you ask me. Now I would like to see, you know, the curriculum push even further in many areas. Uh, when it comes to the Barbary pirates, when it comes to uh, the Olmec empires, the Saskatchewans, when it comes to some of the other lesser known things, when it comes to the end of the transatlantic slave trade, how that all stuff came into place, when it comes to well, heck, they could really replace this entire curriculum with one of Walter Williams's books uh, on race and ethnicity, how much can be blamed on discrimination, uh, on race and economics. They could really replace this entire curriculum and courses with just one of his books, um, or things like that. I, the education sector, the education system is it's not what it was when we were younger, and it's hard to say because heck, we're what, about to be 10 years graduated, about to go to our high school reunions, um, and the shift has changed so drastically, so quickly. Uh, it's not the way it should be, and now you're starting to see where, well, the news, NBC News particularly, was talking about, uh well, black parents are leaving the schools in droves because of this AP, African American Studies, to homeschool their kids and teach them this stuff. Well, I say that it's about time, not that black people pull their kids out of school, but it's about time that parents are taking the education of their kids into their own hands. It's a shame that it was this crappy curriculum, which is okay minus section 4 and some parts of 2 and 3, that it took this for that to happen. School choice, or giving and allowing competition against public schooling, I think it's would make schooling and educating as a whole better. But it's a shame that it's taken this long for parents to finally do something about that. And the Republicans, in my opinion, uh, they are they're going to mess up here because they were able to gain suburban mothers with Glenn Youngkin, people like Ron DeSantis is the reason why they're harping on education so much. But the fact that the Republicans on the major stages are not doing anything or not saying anything towards education or trying to get anything going towards education, trying to get that power back into the hands of the parents, the Republicans are going to mess up and allow the Democrats to take this area where they've been able to pull some ground in key states like Florida and Virginia. What do you think?
No, I don't know, man. I really don't. Education, it's, I don't know. I don't really have anything to say about it.
And here I thought you were the more education oriented person than me. I,
No, dude, I don't honestly, the school system, I have no use for it.
you know, at this point, I really don't have a use for it. But as
I've
when we
always
talk,
been, autodidactic like you,
but we
self-taught.
talked about this before. The thing that I hate about the education system is these lobbyists, these teachers unions, these labor unions, they got together and they made it harder, if not impossible, for people like you and I to self teach ourselves and then go past the bar and become a lawyer, or to go pass a medical exam and become a top ranking doctor or something like that, because of the labor unions and the lobbyists. They've lined the pockets of government so much to keep people like us out. Because if you go back to what our first 20 or so presidents, most of them were self-taught lawyers. Uh, for the father of the Democrat Party, Andrew Jackson, he didn't even know how to read or write until he was like in his 20s. And once his wife taught him how to read and write, he went on to teach himself law and became a self-taught lawyer, passed the bar, and then went later on to become president. I would love for something like that to be possible for us in our
Well, now
generation, but
you'll never, with the establishment that we have, you'll no nobody without formal training or a college degree will be taken seriously by academia, or but who really cares at this point? We can study and read whatever we want and then talk about it online.
yeah, but the reason why I find it to be such a problem is it creates an unnecessary financial barrier for people like you and I to get started in those fields. We if you know you for example, I begin with you with your mother's history, with your parents' history. I would say that you probably have more on hand knowledge than most paralegals and lawyers working in buildings today. But because you don't have a degree or haven't worked underneath a master lawyer for a number of years, you would have to go to school and spend an unnecessary, absorbent amount of money to be able to do what you already know how to do better than some of these people that are getting paid to do it. And that's
Yeah,
that's what I
it's just
find to be so corrupt about these things, because the problem is like what we've been saying for a long time. There's so many laws on the books that never expire. Something needs to be done that causes these bills to expire. Things like the Robert Wagner Act, the Davis Bacon Act, things like those need to be off the books so that people can start to make better careers without having to get in debt to make a career. That's sort of where I'm going with that. It's not that I disagree with you on it. It's just that I feel a little bit more adamant about it because heck, I would love to go out there and be self taught, do my own studies, my own research, but I don't have $60,000 to blow on an unnecessary degree.
that's what I'm saying. We have to use alternative means by writing books or talking about it, and that's the options we have.
Yeah, and even in those particular fields, they've made it more difficult for us. Publishing used to be I won't say that it was easy, but it used to be a hell of a
I feel like it's a lot
uh,
easier now than it's ever been to publish. I mean, you can self-publish
yeah, you can do
online.
self-publishing now. But you used to be able to get by on doing a lot more for less before the government started getting involved in everything. I was talking to my sister today about that. Government involvement, over involvement, is what's caused so many of these problems. And it's and it's not particularly government's fault. It's their fault because they passed the laws, but it's the fault of these labor unions, these lobbyists that constantly, once say for example, uh um oh, what's his name, that guy that does Morris Bart, let's say Morris Bart is losing money because you became uh a lawyer without having to pass the bar. You became a lawyer and you're doing a better job than he is, or an equal job to him for less money. So what does he do? He lobbies and says that uh, there should be no lawyers that have not passed the bar or have this such and such degree or certificate, and they shouldn't be able to charge less than this amount of money. So that drives you completely out of business, and that's not right. That's not fair. And I think that I don't know how it's going to get solved, but something has to give. And I don't know if you were watching uh the the vote for Speaker of the House, where the Republicans were having trouble with Matt Gaetz and all of them. The Freedom Caucus were trying to get their demands to be um, accepted by Kevin McCarthy. I don't know if you even like Kevin McCarthy's jobs performance so far, but
I think
I
he's
would
doing better than expected, actually.
I do I also, but I was thinking and I was hoping that maybe if the Freedom Caucus, which I don't know, some people in the Freedom Caucus, I think they're just in it just to try to boost their own political careers by getting more time. But if the Freedom Caucus and people like Ron Paul or Rand Paul, I don't know which one it is that's actually in office right now, uh, if they could use the power that they have right now by having the majority of them be able to block votes that don't require some of these old bills to be expired or expunged, I don't see any other way for this particular problem to get solved. Not in our, not I won't say in our lifetime, but not within this decade or maybe even the next decade.
Yeah, who knows? I feel like the current system we have can't persist. I mean, in all likelihood, society will collapse in some form within our lifetimes.
Yeah, I think right now, um, our recession, or technically not recession according to the Biden administration, but in my view, we're in a depression because when the debt ceiling hit, we can't the government can't borrow any more money, but they're still throwing away billions and trillions of dollars every year. We just gave another couple $1 billion to Ukraine. And, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem giving Ukraine any supplies. The problem I have with Ukraine is, why in the hell are we giving them money? They should be giving us money for the supplies. They should be paying us. I don't understand what I don't understand the people that are running this country. You can't run things off of nothing. If they want help and support, they need to be willing to pay for it. We shouldn't be paying them. And then you have, what's his name, Zelensky, saying that we ought to be giving them more money because they can't afford to pay for the cable bill or something like that. I'm like, get out of here with that nonsense.
Cable bill.
I don't remember what it was exactly, but Zelensky said that we needed to give them more money because they weren't able to afford something, and it had nothing to do with the war. I can't remember what it was exactly. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I'm just lost for words at the moment for it. But I want to go ahead and wrap things up. We're reaching
So,
an hour and 30 minutes. Um, with that being said, I'm going to do a newscast tomorrow. Tomorrow morning after Sunday school. You're welcome to join me if you want to, but it's not necessary for you to, because I'm going to make the newscast by myself. 'Cause, I told you Jay's off the show. Um, and it's not going to be very long newscast, probably 35 to 45 minutes. I don't want to be long because it's a lot of stuff to cover from our vacation up till now and things of that nature. What we are going to be working on a new title for the show, because I think the story of America has kind of run its course. It's time to change the title, time to change the name. It's time to be a little bit more fun with everything. We'll still talk politics. We'll still talk things that matter. And whenever we get to the political season, Of course, all things are open then because there's a lot more to cover in the political season than there is about the political season. But we want to expand, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and not Rhett, but a friend of mine before, and I think I said this in my opening show, uh, 2 weeks ago, that I've been looking at the demographics of YouTube and other podcasts, and we produced a lot of content last year, but I'm looking at other things, and some of the topics that interest Rhett and myself, they don't get enough attention on YouTube and other podcasts and stuff like that. So I want to start doing those things that we can just talk about for hours and not have to depress ourselves with the foreboding and impending doom of our current political and economic systems. I'm pretty sure Rhett is in 100% agreement with that. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to our first official episode. This is episode 2 of season 5, but this is our first official episode together. Thank you for joining me, to my co-host Rhett Williams of here. Thank you all, our viewers. So we're going to be streaming this again next week for the people who didn't get to see it on Facebook and on just Facebook. Twitter, we still got it on Twitter and YouTube and the other forums. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I told you this, Rhett, but we're on iHeartRadio now. We're on iHeartRadio and Amazon Podcasts now. So we're gonna get some more stuff. We're also gonna be working on getting some better sponsors and stuff as well, friends. And we hope that you guys will continue to join us for the ride. But please, if you can do me just a favor, interact with us on our videos, like, share, download our content, and most of all, comment on those things because it allows us to better prepare and plan for episodes that you guys would love to hear. If what we talk about in a previous episode or previous week has piqued your interest, let us know so that we can piece together a plan to have a conversation about that in a future episode that can dive into a little bit more. Any amount of interaction helps the cause and it helps us make better content for you. And we're looking to have a wonderful, great season 5, and we'll see you guys